Boop, 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 boop. Time to get this meeting started.
Hey, Nova! How's it going, my man?
Going good, going good. I'm looking forward to talking about what video we can make together.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be so good, dude. I can't wait to talk about Dark Lords. They're my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh archetype ever, and I so can't wait to talk about these cards in a video with you.
Sorry, no can do. I've already done that one.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, I don't really know why you didn't just kind of set them aside for me. I mean, it's kind of weird. You know it's my favorite archetype. Whatever, it's fine. What about Yubel? I mean, I did a video essay about Yubel's character arc from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX a few months ago that's doing pretty well, and hey, Phantom Nightmare dropped last month in the TCG, so Yubel's pretty relevant right now.
Yeah, I agree. I agree so much that I've actually already done that one too.
Huh. Okay. What about Cyber Dragons? They're another favorite archetype of mine, and I've always been a big fan of Zane Truesdale.
Daniel, have you even looked at my channel recently?
Oh, for crying out loud. I mean, can we at least do something like Blue Eyes?
Oh, hey, that's a bit much. Raise our social links up a bit more and then we'll talk.
Dude, what does Persona have to do with this?
Never played it. Anyway, I was actually thinking Cloudians today. Pretty short and sweet, very nostalgic. And also, if you've played the game as long as I have, then you may have some fond memories of playing these.
Huh? Cloudian?
Yes, Cloudians. Is Discord bugging out on us or something?
We finally get to do a video together, and you're telling me that I'm stuck talking about the signature archetype of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX's smarmiest, most insufferable, wet paper towel of a man, Adrian Gecko? The guy who quotes Descartes in the middle of duels like some pretentious Philosophy 101 student and thinks that makes him look sophisticated? The most selfish, least likable anti-hero in the entirety of not just GX, but Yu-Gi-Oh! As a whole, who gladly sacrificed the only person on Earth who loved him unconditionally for some trading cards. That Adrian Gecko. Do I have that right?
Is that gonna be a problem?
Yeah, no. You know what? I'm out.
What'd I say? Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. Well, I already went ahead and wrote the script, so I can't really scrap it now. Premiering in the November 2007 core set, Gladiator's Assault, Cloudians released to the uproarious applause of everyone looking for a cheap pile of cards that could cheese a win, and has sadly not had much fanfare since, only getting some legacy support in Dark Neostorm around 11 years since its last entry. There really isn't that much more to say about them historically, so what's the deal with Cloudians? Well, they're a series of water attribute fairy type monsters, mostly. We'll get to the exceptions as they come up, and speaking of exceptions, most of them can be destroyed by battle, but if they're ever in phase-up defense position, they're destroyed immediately, so cards like Enemy Controller are just a kill button for them. So you effectively have a fleet of monsters that your opponent can't effectively run over in battle, but you'll still have to take the damage, and trying to hide from that just gets them exploded. But another big mechanic of the theme is fog counters. Like with most early counters, the more you have, the more stuff you can do. So you're going to want to stock up on as many ways to make fog counters as you can. Let's start things off with Cloudian Sheep Cloud, a level 1 monster with 0 attack and defense, and when destroyed by a battle and sent to the grave, you can special summon 2 Cloudian tokens, which are level 1 water fairy monsters with 0 attack and defense in defense position, and they can't be used for a tribute summon unless it's for a Cloudian monster. Now, this monster doesn't have the usual Cloudian auto-destruct and battle protection text, so presumably the idea is to set this, your opponent runs over it with no other attacks, and then you tribute those tokens for your big boss monsters. But that supposes your opponent only has a single attack. So if you want this to be anything more than 3 glorified blockers, it may be best to special summon this, jam it into an opponent's attack position monster, then tribute summon during main phase 2. Or just link them off. These weren't exactly future-proofed, so aside from non-Cloudian tribute summoning, you can use them for whatever you want. And even beyond that, this thing just being a messed up little evil cloud is one of my favorite things ever. Whenever I type the little smiling imp into chat, this is what I look like, if you even care. Cloudian Ghost Fog is a level 1 Fiend monster with 0 attack and defense that can't be special summoned. All battle damage to either player from a battle involving this monster becomes 0, and if this card is destroyed by battle, distribute fog counters equal to the level of the monster that destroyed it among face-up monsters. Like with Sheep Cloud, this doesn't have the usual Cloudian effects. Really started this section off on the wrong foot here, letting this act as a blocker to take a hit, and if a particularly big monster runs this over, then you just got a buttload of counters to work with. Though with the introduction of Xyz monsters and later links, this card got a lot more complicated. Now there are monsters that can destroy this and get you no value out of it. So like with Sheep Cloud, the proactive approach might be possible, smashing this into an opposing monster with levels before your opponent can attack it with something that doesn't. And this time around, you won't be taking any damage. But what I find most funny is that because it's a fiend with 0 attack and defense, it's valid material for the newly revealed Phantom of Yubel fusion. That's right, now Adrian has a card that has direct synergy with the entity that killed him. Hooray! Cloudian Poison Cloud is a level 3 monster with 0 attack and 1000 defense, and when destroyed by a battle and sent to the grave, if this card was face up at the start of the damage step, destroy the monster that destroyed Poison Cloud, and if you do, burn your opponent for 800 damage. Once again, no usual Cloudian text, but you can't hide this away in defense position if you want to get the full value out of it, at least insofar as setting it in face down defense position. You'll want to normal summon this, leaving you vulnerable to a big chunk of damage, or you'll have to special summon it, and we do have a few ways of handling that, so it's not unreasonable to make this resolve without taking life point damage, but your opponent will have to run smack dab right into it unless you take the fight to them first. My question though is, how does this have 0 attack when Poison Cloud very clearly has a thick dad bod going on here? Are you telling me that Cloud anatomy doesn't match 1-to-1 with human anatomy? That seems unrealistic. The next 3 we're going to cover in quick succession because they all have a pretty similar template. Cloudian Acid Cloud is a level 4 monster with 500 attack and 0 defense, finally has the usual Cloudian text, and when normal summoned, you place a fog counter on this card for each Cloudian on the field, including this card. And you can remove 2 fog counters from this card to destroy a spell or trap card on the field. So the more established your board is, the more back row Acid can take out. Though doesn't do much if you summon it on its lonesome, because it'll only get a single fog counter. But it's not once per turn, so as long as you can keep feeding it counters, the worse off your opponent is. The same goes for Cloudian Cirrostratus, a level 4 monster with 900 attack and 0 defense with similar text to Acid Cloud, but this time you can remove 2 fog counters from this card to destroy any monster on the field. So we have a pretty strong duo that covers the whole spectrum of removal, but we're not done yet, because we also have Cloudian Altis, a level 4 monster with 1300 attack and 0 defense, also shares similar text to the previous 2, but this time can remove 3 fog counters from anywhere on the field, not just itself, to discard a random card from your opponent's hand. That's right, repeatable hand attack at your fingertips. And because it can pull from any card on the field, this can do some real damage if you can spread out those counters. These 3 form a really useful core of monsters, with the real drawback being those fog counter requirements necessitating generators to function. And spoilers, they aren't exactly as effective as spell counters. But if you can manage to solve the resource problem, your opponent's vision to their path of victory is gonna get a little clouded. Cloudian Storm Dragon is a level 4 monster with 1000 attack and 0 defense that can't be normal summoned or set, and must be special summoned from your hand by banishing a Cloudian monster from your grave. It has the usual Cloudian text, and once per turn, you can target a face-up monster on the field to place a fog counter on that target. So it's a relatively free monster that gets you a fog counter every turn. It's everything we could have ever wanted, save for the fact that a single fog counter doesn't do much. You'll need at least 2 to activate an effect. But a steady stream of counters is better than none, and with 2 Storm Dragons active, you can be a lot more proactive with your plays. It's an important part of any Cloudian list, but that doesn't mean I have to like it. Something about that tongue is just not sitting right with me. If a cloud is thirsty, then we've got some issues. Cloudian Turbulence is a level 4 monster with 800 attack and 0 defense, and actually has similar text to Acid Cloud, Altis, and Cirrostratus, but I felt it did something unique enough that it needed to be covered on its own, because it can remove a single fog counter from itself to special summon a Cloudian Smoke Ball from your deck or either player's graveyard. Upon initial release, this was pretty harmless. For context, Smoke Balls are level 1 normal monsters with 200 attack and 600 defense, and are newborn Cloudians. They fear being alone and would rather swing and sway in the sky with their friends. so they're pretty harmless, effectively only acting as tribute fodder for your bigger monsters. But today, in modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, Turbulence represents a wealth of link material. As long as Smokeball is valid material for them, every fog counter on Turbulence represents one link rating of material, because you can keep pulling those pom-poms right from the grave. It's like Agent of Creation Venus and her famous shine balls with potentially way more upside, especially because you won't be paying 500 life points to get impermed. Any list trying to be competitive nowadays is going to try and lean into Turbulence as much as possible to make the extra deck their personal playground. Especially because even by itself, Turbulence is a one-card link too. But what I find funny is that you can summon smoke balls from either grave with this. Was the mirror match that expected? Did you need to have counterplay against other Cloudian decks here? What's going on? Cloudian Nimbus Man is a level 5 monster with 1000 attack and defense with the usual Cloudian text. While you only need one tribute for it, you can tribute any number of water monsters for its tribute summon, and you place fog counters on it for each water monster tributed for its tribute summon. Also, Nimbus Man gains 500 attack for each fog counter on the entire field. So with just 4 of them, this rivals Blue Eyes White Dragon, and let me tell you, the fog counter count can get pretty high. It's probably not worth tributing multiple monsters for it, but you do have the option. Though I don't know how I feel about this being a machine that turns water monsters into an opaque mist. Doesn't really bode well for all the frogs out there. Cloudian Eye of the Typhoon is a level 8 Wind Aqua monster, how's that for a swerve, with the usual Cloudian text. When this card declares an attack, change the battle position of all face-up monsters on the field, wait for it, except Cloudian monsters. So you can basically choose how you fight your opponent's monsters. If they're trying to hide one of their weaker stats, you can just shift them around. Except Link monsters, but hey, what can you do? And sadly, while we do have a way to cheat this into play, we don't have a good way to cheat this into play. Because a 2 tribute monster like this that dies to the card Stop Attack isn't a very good investment. That being said, any way to get it onto the field for cheap is better than nothing. Also, I know people give the side eye to the anime art here, and for good reason, but me, I'm worried about the actual art. Look at its lips! It's literally doing the sweet bro and hella Jeff mouth! Alright, that does it for the monsters. Now it's time for the spells and traps. Cloudian Aerosol is a normal spell card that has you discarding a Cloudian monster, then targeting a face-up monster on the field to place fog counters on that target equal to its level. You can banish this card and a Cloudian monster from your grave to special summon a Cloudian monster from your deck, but you can only use one effect of this card per turn, and only once per turn. So if your opponent has a level 8 monster, then congrats, you just made 8 fog counters. Target either Acid Cloud or Cirrostratus, and now you get 2 instances of their removal effect. It's a great way to serve up the counters that you need, and helps to get you your big monsters. The Grave effect cheats out Nimbus Man and Typhoon too, which is basically what I was looking for. This Dark Neostorm Legacy support is just what the doctor ordered, if the effects weren't mutually exclusive. The two flow into each other so well. You pitch a Cloudian, put a bunch of counters on something, then banish Aerosol and that Cloudian to get a huge Nimbus Man. Or Typhoon if it fits the situation better. But now that it's on a 1-turn delay, honestly this is just unfair. Not unplayable, just outrageously mishandled. Like, what are you worried about, Cloudian OTK? Gotta be the aerosol making him think silly. Those chemicals will really get you. Lucky Cloud is a normal spell card that, during the end phase, if you summoned 2 or more Cloudian monsters with the same name this turn, draw 2 cards. It's a conditional Pot of Greed that delays the draws until the end phase, and you have to spam out Cloudians to get that benefit. Not an issue for Turbulence and its smoke balls, mind you, but for everything else, it's gonna be a chore. This has gotten better with the advent of hand traps, giving you something to do with the cards that you draw during the end phase, and with how many on-theme cards you'll want to cut from your list, you should have plenty of room for non-engine. But for any of it to stand up against anything printed after 2008, you're gonna have to be pretty lucky. Diamond Dust Cyclone is a quick play spell card that selects a monster with 4 or more fog counters on it, destroys it, and then you draw cards for every 4 fog counters that were on it. This is probably my favorite piece of removal in the theme. It always replaces itself with at least one draw and rewards you for slathering on the counters, potentially leading to a big chunk of draws. And at quick speed, you can even use this at inopportune times to mess up your opponent, though a lack of good quick play fog counter distributors makes this a bit less flexible than it may appear to be on the surface. So you may want to opt for a more powerful, though less card advantage oriented, Diamond Dust attack from Final Fantasy's own Shiva. Always good to have those options. Fog Control is a quick play spell card that tributes a face-up Cloudian monster you control to place 3 fog counters on a face-up monster. So if your Cloudian is about to be taken out by removal, or God forbid your opponent is about to resolve a level limit area B, you can make sure you get some value out of the monster by converting it into fog counters. And 3 isn't nothing. I mean, that's a whole Altus activation. That's an Acid Cloud or Cirrostratus activation with change. It's still not great, but I imagine a future where we get new Cloudian support that gains effects when sent from the field to the graveyard, and in that case, this will be a fine card to add to your lineup. But that's not likely to happen. It's not like I control future card releases. Or do I? Cloudian Squall is a continuous spell card, and during each of your standby phases, places a fog counter on every face-up monster on the field. An innocuous effect, but trust me, this gets out of hand real quick. The amount of counters scales with how developed both you and your opponent's fields are, up to a total of 12 counters being generated. And because you can have multiple Squalls, you'll be able to stock up real quick. Nimbus Man can shoot up to unreasonably high attack stats, while Cirrostratus, Acid Cloud, or even Altus can have an activation every turn. The main issue now is that it's pretty slow, and it doesn't do much to help by itself. If this was a modern card, it'd be keeping our monsters from being destroyed while in defense position, or providing us with extra normal summons, or something like that. Still, if you're playing the deck, it may be worth it to keep a couple of these on hand so you have some ammo. Oh, and be careful, I hear it likes to go by Cloudian Leon these days, so keep that in mind. Summon Cloud is a continuous spell card, and once per turn during your main phase, if you don't control any monsters, you can special summon a level 4 or lower Cloudian monster from your hand or either player's grave. If you special summon a monster from the grave with this effect, destroy this card. This is like a number of other continuous spells from back in the day: Valhalla, Hall of the Fallen, Water Hazard, and Call of the Mummy. But this comes with the extra bonus of trading it out to summon from the grave, which honestly I feel like is brilliant design. Kinda wish they added it to more cards of this style. But it still runs into the issue of being useless if you have an established board, and since you're only summoning Cloudians with this, not a general monster category, it's not leaning into any other synergies. Heck, it doesn't even lean into our own synergies half the time, because while a free monster is nice, Altus, Acid Cloud, and Cirrostratus only gain counters when normal summoned. So, honestly, Valhalla may still be the option of choice here. They are mostly fairies after all, and it doesn't explode when you try to resurrect anything, so it makes for a way better place to store all your smoke balls. Raging Cloudian is a normal trap card that you can only activate when any number of Cloudian monsters you control are destroyed by their own effect and sent to the grave. Special summon one of them from your grave in attack position and place a fog counter on it, and it can't be changed to defense position by card effects. So this deck comes with a way to recover from its biggest weakness, but I don't know, as far as recovery cards go, we can do better than a delayed revive that only works if your opponent deals with your monsters in a particular way, or you trigger it yourself. With support like this, I can see why they're so angry. Rainstorm is a normal trap card that targets a Cloudian monster you control, reduces its attack by exactly 1,000 or 2,000, and if you do, apply the appropriate effect. If it lost 1,000 attack, you destroy a spell or trap card your opponent controls, and if it lost 2,000, it destroys 2 cards your opponent controls. Now that sounds pretty cool. It's either Dust Tornado or Icarus attack without the tribute, depending on how much attack you lose. But without any other stat boosters, we only have 4 monsters that can actually lose 1,000 attack, and only Typhoon has the base attack needed to pop 2 cards. Nimbus Man is probably the best subject for this, as the fog counter boost can pretty easily counteract this, but it means we have an archetypal card that only really works with 1, maybe 2 cards at best. Oof, when the bad cards rain, it pours. Good grief. Updraft is a normal trap card that removes all fog counters from the field to burn your opponent for 300 damage for each fog counter removed. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, it takes 27 fog counters to take your opponent from 8,000 to 0. And that's going to be a pretty difficult number to get to. Even 2 Cloudian Squalls next to a stacked field of monsters will only generate 24 counters, so you'll want to pair this with other burn tactics or ways to lower your opponent's life points to make good use of this. And I put a lot of emphasis on winning the game here because you are giving up all your counters to use this, which means you can't fuel any of your other effects. But I am here to give you a funny prank you can pull at locals. Just talk about Cloudians, and make sure this card sounds like the most important thing in the whole world, and everyone who doesn't know any better will say, "What's up, draft?" And then, you've got him. Natural Disaster is a continuous trap card, and it burns your opponent for 500 damage each time any number of cards are destroyed and sent to the grave by the effect of a Cloudian monster. Look, it's not a great win condition, but honestly, paired with Updraft, it may be the best we have. Acid Cloud and Zero Stratus now knock off life points whenever they blow stuff up, and with their minuscule attack stats, they could use all the help they can get. Not to mention that, like Cloudian Squall, multiple natural disasters stack. Suddenly, having to destroy 16 cards to win turns into 8, and now it's not looking so rough. I mean, it is still pretty rough, don't get me wrong, but compared to poking in with a 900 attack monster that can't defend itself or your life points on its own, yeah, no thank you. That's the real disaster. Alright, normally we try to take some time to cover combos in this section of the video, but we do skip over it if that deck doesn't have a regular bread and butter combo, or just have way too many entry level options to choose from. This is one of those times, specifically the former. So instead, I'm ceding some time over to today's guest, SuperNerdDaniel, who has some thoughts about Fog King. Not necessarily a Cloudian card, but it is one of Adrian's power cards that he used in conjunction with the Cloudians, and, well, I'll let him explain.
Well, I mean, yeah, of course I'm still gonna do the video, but it's not like What do you mean I don't have grounds for a lawsuit? This totally counts as emotional damage. Oh, wait, hang on, I'll call you back. Hey, yeah, hi, so, Fog King, yeah, let's talk about that Fog King. But yeah, like N.O.V.A alluded to, we need to talk about the card Fog King for a second, because despite not being a Cloudian card and really not having any synergy with them at all, it is a card that was prominently used by Adrian Gecko during his duel with Yubel in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX episode 150, The Ultimate Face-Off Part 2, and I really wanted to touch on the vast difference between the actual Fog King card in the TCG and the one that's featured in the anime, especially when used alongside 2 of its anime-exclusive support cards, because the difference in their power level is kind of f***ing insane, actually. Alright, first things first. The actual TCG version of Fog King is a level 7 water attribute spellcaster monster with 0 attack and 0 defense, first released in May 2008's core set, Light of Destruction, whose attack points become the sum total of the attack points from the monsters that were sacrificed to summon him. Of course, you can totally just summon him with only 1 sacrifice, or none if you're really that desperate for a body on the board. However, then you're just stuck with a level 7 sitting duck with no attack or defense, and remember, this isn't a special summon, so you're burning your 1 normal per turn on this. And once he's out there, regardless of his stats, all he really does is prevent either player from tributing cards, which, you know, unless you really need a weirdly specific tech to deal with Rikkas, probably isn't gonna matter a whole bunch. So essentially, the real-life version of Fog King is not only a worse Fusilier Dragon the dual mode beast, but somehow simultaneously also a worse Vanity's Fiend. And it's not like he'll even be out there for very long preventing those pesky tributes, because he has no built-in protections from any kind of removal, so any bog-standard board breaker is just gonna knock your figurehead Fog King right off his throne in about 10 seconds, and then forget he was ever sat there in the next 5. The anime version, on the other hand, stats-wise it's basically the same. Water, level 7 spellcaster, 0 attack and defense on summon, but it doesn't get any stat buffs from sacrifices. Instead, the anime version of Fog King can be summoned without tributes if you have the field spell Fog Castle on the field, and trust me, I'll get to Fog Castle in a hot second. And while Fog King is on the field, all other effect monsters on the field have their effects negated. In addition to this, when it attacks an opponent's monster, you can change Fog King's attack to be 1 point, which then also does the same thing to the attack points of the target. Yeah, so this thing not only being a walking skill drain that also is able to undo any attack buffs from whatever it battles is already enough of an upgrade from the IRL version, but trust me, when we bring in those 2 support cards I mentioned earlier, he gets just a little bit more busted. First off, every king needs a castle. A fog castle to be precise. This is a field spell card exclusive to the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime and a couple of video games with a pretty unique gimmick. Whenever a monster you control is destroyed and goes to the graveyard, you can re-summon it, but the catch is, you have to summon it in a different monster zone, with the one it previously occupied instead being given a beacon counter, thus becoming unusable. Combining this with the effect of Fog King himself that not only negates other monster effects but also turns every battle into a 1-point crash, Adrian was actually able to destroy Yubel's Chaos Phantasm Armatile, which, lest we forget, can't be destroyed in battle by negating its battle protection, all the while saving Fog King himself from destruction for the low cost of one of his own monster zones. And then there's the other GX exclusive support card, Royal Sword. It's an equipped spell card that can only be equipped to Fog King, and when said equipped Fog King engages in battle, it gains 1 crest counter at the end of the battle phase with a maximum of 4. Every crest counter gives Fog King an additional 800 attack points, so a possible total of 3,200, and on top of that, and this is the big one, you can send your Royal Sword with 4 crest counters straight to the graveyard to instantly inflict a whopping 4,000 points of damage to your opponents. And remember, we're talking about the anime here, where 4,000 life points is someone's entire Duel Monsters lifespan, meaning that the combination of Fog King, Royal Sword, and Fog Castle gave Adrian Gecko another alternate win condition to shoot for, on top of the base Exodius strat, and the backup one that he had with Exodius, the Ultimate Forbidden Lord. And it probably would have worked too, had Yubel not used the effect of Grave Squirmer to pop the sword before Adrian could use the burn effect for the win con. Oh, and speaking of win cons, I may have neglected to mention the last effect of Fog Castle, which, when you've used up all your monster zones by Fog Castle's effect, allows you to send Fog Castle and your entire hand to the graveyard to just add any 4 cards from your graveyard, just any 4 cards at all, straight to your hand. And Adrian, of course, used this as yet another opportunity to shoot for the original Exodius strat. So not only was the Fog King Fog Castle Royal Sword combo in and of itself an alternate win con, but it basically had a built-in failsafe to allow Adrian to go for his original win con. Luckily though, everyone's favorite non-binary demon had every possible counter to every possible Exodius strat that he cooked up, so hey, it all worked out in the end, you know? Another win for the good guys.
Wait, but wasn't Yubel the main villain of Season 3?
Another win for the good guys!
Alright, so that's all the Cloudian cards, but what do we do with them? Well, it's rough out there for a theme that hasn't seen any good support since before the iPad released. Our wall of invincible puff balls can maintain board presence in the face of an enemy with no removal effects, but we still get punched in the face regardless. So we need ways to further protect our puffs and find a way to close out games quickly, possibly with some combination of Nimbus Man Beatdown and Fog Burn. So what can we play to help them out? First off, we may want to find a way to fend off that battle damage, and a great card that combos well with our monsters is the famous Spirit Barrier! As long as you have monsters, you don't take any battle damage, so our immortal clouds become the perfect defenders. Oh yeah, and I guess there's also Sanctuary in the Sky too. This was an old tech pick that helped to keep you off the clock, and it's actually evolved over the years. And kind of like Umi, a number of different themes have cropped up around the Sanctuary in the Sky over the years, which means you'll be able to lean into some of those support effects. God, that's a theme I'm not looking forward to covering later. Keeping our opponent on the back foot is gonna be key, and thankfully, we have one of the best floodgate options we could ask for, Archlord Christia. Since we're all fairies, we just gotta get a few into the grave, and Turbulence is a great enabler since you can cycle smoke balls out of your deck and then in and out of your grave. And once you get this onto the board, boom, there goes those special summons. From here, we can accrue fog counters until we can either one-shot our opponent with Nimbus Man, or use Updraft to knock him out. If you don't need Aerosol to make fog counters, then Foolish Burial Goods is a great option to get it directly from the deck, so as long as you have another Cloudian in your grave, you've got your hands on a free Cloudian. Link Spider is going to be super helpful as a way to play through hands where you end up drawing multiple smoke balls, but we also have Link Karibo to bounce around all the level 1s we'll be summoning. Ice Jades make for a strong support inclusion in most water decks, and Cloudian is no exception. Acti is a bit of a draw engine, Tanola revives our Cloudians from the grave, except Eye of the Typhoon annoyingly, and Tremora can turbo out our Cloudians from our hand. Once again, except for Eye of the Typhoon. Diamond Dust, not the Cyclone version, also gives us another way to burn out our opponent. We can use Updraft first to use up our fog counters, then trade in our waters for even more damage. Bonus if our opponent is on waters, cause it'll blast those away too for even more damage. One of the upsides of our Cloudians having low attack stats means that almost all of them can be recurred using Salvage. You can reclaim cards like Storm Dragon to help you get your fog counters back onto the field, or get Turbulence so you can turbo out more material onto the board. As for fairy support, the Heralds of Green, Purple, and Orange Light are neat hand traps to use to counteract a lot of interaction. Protecting Spirit Logath can be summoned from the hand pretty easily, since a lot of our Cloudians activate an effect when normal summoned. And it comes with a spiffy removal effect, but for the love of God, make sure you do not shift your Cloudians to defense position with it, unless you're trying to make room for something. The Sanctuary in the Sky is also going to be pretty clutch. Divine Punishment is basically an Omni-Negate, Fallen Sanctuary helps get our field spell into play and gives us some negates, and the Chorus in the Sky can recycle our Cloudians, again except Typhoon and some of our Fiends, and if any of your Sanctuary cards are banished, you can get one back. The Sanctum of Parshath not only gives your fairies a nifty little boost, it also keeps your back row safe before you use them, and can recycle your cards so your grind game is immaculate. Not to mention it also counts as Sanctuary in the Sky. Condemned Dark Lord is a great link to sync.
Oh, no you don't. If anybody in this video is going to talk about shoehorning Dark Lords into other fairy-type monster archetypes, it's going to be me, pal. Condemned Dark Lord, my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh card by the way, is a great link to sink your materials into, giving you 500 life points at the end of your turn for every fairy you control, which does include a pretty decent majority of your Cloudian monsters, and her Dark Lord Search effect, as well as her Banish from the Graveyard to Tribute Summon effect, could also enable a lot of Dark Lord shenanigans with the likes of Morningstar and Nastin. Dark Lord's Shell is obviously always a must-have for any Dark Lord engine, given her discard to draw 2 effect, and with some Dark Lords and Cloudians on the field, with Condemned counting as 2 link materials herself, you can link climb into Celestial Night Lord Parshath to search out Sanctuary in the Sky and its associated support cards, while also giving you a way to summon some big fairies from your hand as the game goes on. Not to mention, if you run the first Dark Lord in your extra deck, that provides an additional special summon for your fairy-type Cloudians, as well as granting them targeting protection, all the while being a big, handsome 4K beatstick that sometimes moonlights as a walking nuke. I mean, personally, I wouldn't mix my personal favorite archetype with that of one of my least favorite Yu-Gi-Oh characters, but, I guess that's just a matter of taste.
As for a silly tech pick, I've gotta go with Begone, Knave! If a monster deals battle damage, it goes back to hand, which isn't too good for a Nimbus Man-focused build, needing to essentially one-shot your opponent, but if we focus on effect damage, we don't really care too much. On the flip side, if our opponent attacks into one of our Cloudians, we'll get to keep it, but our opponent's monster will have to return to the hand. This is sadly a non-bow with Sanctuary in the Sky, but think of it as a backup for when they deal with that field spell, giving you a way to prune your opponent's field if they get out of control. Alright, that's all the info I have about Cloudians, but how does it stack up against the Nova scale? Novelty. A group of monsters that are difficult to deal with that gain advantage over time thanks to counters is something I don't think we've seen since Cloudian's creation. Now, that may be because the concept of the theme just doesn't work, so it wasn't worth investing in later, but that's not really the point of this section, so Cloudians get a 5 in Novelty. Objectivity. See, in general terms, the Cloudian deck is fine. The archetype itself focuses on a slower style of play that wants to slowly accumulate counters in order to gain victory, but that means you need to tech in a lot of unfun options to make it work. After all, your opponent's going to have a much easier time getting your life points to 0 since they can lean on traditional battling methods. Having a whole bunch of monsters that can be destroyed by battle isn't necessarily unfun because they still let the damage through, but if you do manage to set up Sanctuary, the game is going to grind to a halt. Granted, any modern deck worth its salt will have an out to this, but you're more than likely playing this in a format far removed from modern Yu-Gi-Oh! So in those contexts, this theme can actually be a bit of a pain, so Cloudians get a 4 in Objectivity. Versatility. While we play well with a lot of water and fairy support, they very much prop us up, and we don't do much to offer other decks help. Heck, half the fairy support out there also needs our cards to be light attribute, and in the case of Typhoon, it's basically left out to dry no matter what, which is a really weird situation for a Cloud to be in, so I'm giving Cloudians a 2 in Versatility. Awesomeness. I do have fond memories of stacking up 20 or so counters onto Nimbus Man, capturing a similar feeling to all those Grand Maju players who get an 8,000 attack normal summon after resolving 2 Pot of Desires. But nostalgia must eventually give way to introspection, and even with the introduction of Aerosol, it doesn't make this playstyle much fun. Future support may make piloting this deck more palatable, but for now, I can only muster up a 2 in awesomeness, cause Nimbus Man is still kind of a bop, which leaves Cloudians with a 13 on the Nova scale. And that's all I have to say about Cloudians. I'm happy it was around at the time. While it was trounced by the competition, I still think it made for a cool starting point for a lot of players, especially because it was pretty cheap. And between the infinitely spawning smoke balls and the mass accumulation of fog counters, it's hard to think of a deck more prepared to make ridiculous replays than this. So if you want to get in some goofy games, put these wisps together to get ready for a little Cloud strife. But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Are Cloudians a bunch of tough puffs, or are they just fluff? And which one's your favorite? Zero Stratus has got to be the best. I'm a sucker for anything with a kitty face on it. Let me know your favorites down below, and if you haven't already, make sure you check out SuperNerdDaniel. The name might give away that they're a big Pokemon fan, but don't be fooled. They've also got the Yu-Gi-Oh bug, and if you're watching me, I've got a feeling you've got room in your heart for both. Today's episode is brought to you by my lovely patrons, as well as the lovely people over at Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales and save 5% on your order by using the coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. Today's episode was also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commander Sir Knight JCB and the Critic of Innocence, Nebula Navigator's 3rd Dynasty, Ada Basilisk, Adam Zajdel, Anansi Dragon, Andrew Newman, Kane Senpai, Christopher Fuss, Clockswork, Emony Chan, Eric, Aaron the World Breaker, Frankie, Garland Chaos, Green Knight, Gloomba 331, Great Big Pillock, Groog, Hairbear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Howling Zangetsu, Iron Zero, Iskander 711, Carp, Mana Charge, Marion Jamesy Picata, Mega Combi, Millennia Asta, Muzuki Clark, Nathan Vig, Natiel Lee Alexander, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Rebel King Lucifer, Red Eyes Jackalow, RJ the Jank Monarch, Sammy Haim, Serenity Towns, Sky Buster Leo, That One Dumbass and the Wizard Moose, Cosmic Crusaders Alpha Sly, Almento 5010, A Random Pup, Ariel Kersey, Berin Von Titty Sprinkles, Beluga Master, Blitzwolf, Blue Gem, Borger with a Shotgun, Callum McCann, Chaz Ghost, Childish Lamar, Dr. Reaper RIP, Drachenwald, Eki Bullock, Eva Padilla, Hike Boyagian, Herbal D, Ignis Heat the True Draco Slayer, Inblink, Jester Designs, Kale the Dragon, Kevon Public, King Scarlet Yu-Gi-Oh, Lemon Yu-Gi-Oh, Manga Pages, Marluxia's a Girl, Matt Simmons, Mick Spoofy, Michael Shimabukuro, Nitromo, Obsidian, Ramen Resurrect-chan, Shizuki Nijimura, Sophie, apparently, Stephen Williamson, Taylor Seymour, Terror Top to 3, the Legendary Raven, and Zeldreka, as well as the lovely Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, get my videos early, be a part of these credits and other awesome perks, it would mean the world to me if you checked out the link to my Patreon in the description or consider joining as a YouTube member. And if you'd like to see another video about another GX love of mine, check out this video where I cover another archetype from Gladiator's Assault, Gladiator Beast. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.